Hey, welcome. You've arrived at the process. Dr. John Bush is your spirit guide to winning your fantasy football drafts. About 60% of your success will be at the draft on average. Some people more or less. This is lesson 18. We are still digging in the waters of age analysis. This is part 6. If you haven't seen the other parts, needless to say, I suggest you check it out. If you hadn't seen any of that, just know that there's a commitment of time going through this, and if you know you can't triple speed through my material here. You can kind of go through it, but you're going to hurt yourself in the long run. This is meant to be kind of like you're back in university, since I am a university professor, and this is the kind of style that I use for uh, PowerPoint overview, voiceovers, and these kind of things. So I expect some work on your part, getting deep into the aspects of this. If you're interested, if not, hey, I wouldn't watch any of these, especially if you're in the leagues that I hang around in. Please don't. Okay, so let's continue our journey, lesson 18 here. And besides age, I also am interested in experience. And in the previous segments, I talked about the experience levels, and there's a tie into age, obviously. And what you see here, the top table here is the year sector, and we're focusing on recent times, okay, 17 to 20 positions, and rookies, second year, third year, fourth year, etc., out to year 11 plus in experience. Here's quarterback averages, running backs, tight end, and wide receiver averages of fantasy points per season. This is looking at all players, okay, even bench warmers, okay. I like to look across all the data landscape. It's our old friend reference class forecasting continues, and that is a touchstone. Definitely, you need to watch that several times to make that lesson. Make sure you understand why, and what I'm doing, churning through this. And so below, I had done looking this data in one way. I like to look at data sometimes multiple ways. So what you see here are percentages, and what I did was took each segment here, or each part of the bingo card, and compared it to the positional average. So 119.6 versus 135.7 average is 88% of the average. And so now we can scroll through, and we see we hit a nice area of 111% there. We see a drop, and about average, a little drop, and then notice that uh, looking at all quarterbacks, having the seasoned experience is an advantage if you don't focus beyond just random take all the quarterbacks. Okay, but there's more to that story, and you've probably seen the other lessons. And so we can look and use this as a guide to see peaks and valleys. I think for running backs, pretty much says third, fourth year are the peak. A little bit coming in later, but I think the amount of running backs surviving to this level of experience is low. So the ones that are surviving are probably going to be fairly productive. So I think that may be a little tricky, but I do believe this is telling us we're having, running backs are peaking in this range here. Tight ends, on the other hand, are peaking later, so there is a seasoning kind of thing happening, and I think the metrics show that. So the rookie tight end concept, I believe, overall, not looking at any other factors, has merit to it, and you should be aware of that. So with nothing else as your guide, you should be leading towards sixth, seventh, eighth year seasoning, or probably up at that point. And you're about hitting average at fifth year seasoning. So certainly you really take a nice jump with just 1 year of seasoning, but there's more to follow. Wide receivers, you still have that seasoning concept, and it looks like that lasts till the 9th year overall. So that's got to be good. Some drop off after 10th, 11th. There probably is a lot of wear on the tires there. Certainly, overall rookie wide receivers definitely are making nice jumps in all the positions. Actually, not as much with quarterbacks, but certainly tight ends and wide receivers. There's certainly an implied improvement. So sometimes you could catch, especially in dynasty, rookie types that underperformed, you might be able to pick them up. Most people realize that running backs are going to peak earlier, so I think there's this urgency with running backs, and you'll have a harder time finding some bargains there, I think, in dynasty formats. But I think the tight end and wide receiver data could say it might be worth your time to explore your league and look for potential targets. Okay. So I think you should definitely do that. Let's move on. So here is the graphs, kind of putting those percentages together here. Here's average at 100%. If you look across, okay, probably should have done this in another color, but you can see some peaks and valleys here. And you can see, for instance, looks like your wide receivers are really picking up here. Here they are. Looks like your tight ends are picking up a little earlier than wide receivers, but not lasting as long, which is kind of interesting on peak. Running backs in the yellow are peaking much earlier and then dropping. And then quarterbacks are the blue here. They're really, the seasoning really is having an effect there. This is rookie to year 8 of experience. Actually, it's even further out than that, but probably should be year 11. Not bad. Okay, so I like to visualize the information, and so I think in your next year's draft you should kind of have some cheat sheets of some things we found in our lessons, and I would definitely use those tiebreakers and potentially look for potential targets per round and these kind of things in your draft plan. I know some people like to wing it. I don't like to wing it. Yeah, if there's screaming value and I don't turn down, oh, I have a plan, I must stick to it kind of thing. But for the most part, I do like to have a general roadmap of things that I'm thinking, tendencies, that kind of thing. But looseness is not bad as well. Okay, so definitely keep that as well. This is looking at now the sectors, year sector versus end of the season sector. So the top 6, the next 6, and so forth down to the 48th player at the end of the season per quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. and certainly the averages of fantasy points will drop. What I like to see is how fast or slow that drop is. And to me, I like the percentage concept where you compare to the average. And to me, that is easier to see drops like that. And I'll show you, for instance, quarterbacks, 184% drop to 100 and basically 60. So was that 26%, and then another 20% drop there. So we're dropping in the 20% range here. Okay, and really have a dropout there. Okay, wide receivers, we're dropping. What is that? 40. Was that 130? Was that 46% drop? 20%. So notice that is a really wicked drop there. Notice with tight ends, what is that? 66% drop. Wow, that's worse than running backs. So when you do pick a tight end that ends up out of the top 6 running, you're going to have had a deficit that you've had to fight the whole year. Many people in recent times are looking for that early tight end as part of their tendency. I can't discount that at all, given what I think the metrics are saying to us. Many people are realizing that you can get a good wide receiver with not a lot of hit. This is, what is this, 22% drop? What is this? This is, 14% drop? 9% drop? That's almost steady, right? 9%. So you're really not taking a bite. Notice how far that extends down. You still got 71% of your draft value from the top 6 to the 43rd to 48th wide receiver, still bringing home about half the number. You're not seeing tight end. What is that? 50? Was that a fourth of the show? What is this? You're over 120% less. This is over, what is this, 150 something percent less. Of course, quarterbacks really die out here. So I think it kind of shows you where you have a lot more chance to beat the crowd. And I think a lot of people that will pick running back tight ends early are either knowing this drop is not very high in running backs, and quarterbacks not so bad either. So I think that is driving that, especially if you're good at picking running backs and tight ends and you're nailing those that are, coming in the top 6. I think you're really helping yourself out. I know the zero running back theory, done it myself on occasion, but if everything falls into place and the running backs you pick don't get injured, etc., then your zero running back could leave you out in the cold come playoff time. Always a risk and a danger. So here is the drops. If you look at the drops here on the data, so I think you can see that the most steadiest would be the wide receivers, almost a linear. Notice something like the tight end. Look at that drop. Wow, just the bottom's falling out here. Okay, even it's very steep compared to even the running backs here. The quarterbacks are a little bit more linear, and then you get the drop. So in some ways, the characteristics are quarterbacks and wide receivers have a similarity, whereas tight ends and running backs have that extreme drop concept that applies to their distribution. And this is the last, 4 years? So tight ends even worse. So people take early tight ends because they feel they have such an advantage. You grab a running back and a tight end, you know, and if your opponents are going elsewhere, then by the time they're getting a tight end or running back, they're already way down in value. And so, there's something to be said for those moves in your fantasy draft. Okay, so now I bring in into the season fantasy point just like we did before, but I added then an age sector concept, and then we could look at the drops. Okay, so I like the drops there, and you can kind of see what I was talking about. And again, so we have the seasoning concept applied inside of the positional dropping concept. So we have a synergy of those two variables playing together here. So I think it tells you more of the story when you start combining multiple variables in your models. I mean, I think it definitely does. So let's look quarterbacks. So the youthful quarterbacks my bad. But this is fine. I wanted to do 100% and follow the drops by percent. So what you see there is I took the top fantasy points and made that 100% in the quarterbacks, and that was found in this slot here, 1 to 6 in the young quarterbacks. So we have hot young quarterbacks. They're returning 100% of value. And notice the next level is 90%. The seasoned are about 90. So, I'm not sure age is such a deal, but certainly a young quarterback is going to give you the best advantage. But now look at the drops. Not much difference. I mean, by the 24th quarterback, you're in the 50th percent, almost 60th actually percent. So you hadn't lost but 40% of value. So I think that drives the late quarterback scenarios. People think they can make up that value. To me, I like to stay here. If I'm not going to take an early, I think I can live with 20% off. I think I can make that 20% elsewhere. Running backs, the tops would be the youth. And notice we don't have any old running backs that are in the top 6. Okay, not even in the top. So the running backs, you don't have any in the old dogs. So don't even believe it. Whatever hype, ignore it. And probably even 27 to 30, I would ignore it. Okay. The youth is the show. Dropping wise, you're down to about the 50th percent after 24 running backs. Okay, not bad, but still, quarterbacks are a little better. Tight ends, just real quick, since they're at the 40th percent. So you're having to make up even worse deficit if you wait way late on your tight ends. Even out of the top 6, look at that. You're in the 60th percentile here. Running backs, you're at the 70th percentile. 10% better. Seasoning is critical in tight ends. Okay, but doesn't really matter age 7th to 12th. They're all in the 60th percent. Wide receivers, seasoning. Here it is. And we're at the 80th, almost 90th percent here. Notice there's not a lot of drop there, which is kind of interesting. But look at the running backs there. So if you take a running back and hope to grab these and come back with a wide receiver, you really haven't cost yourself a lot, and a lot of people do take that. So imagine you get one of these, a tight end, and then you're in battle for some of these. You haven't lost as much. So a lot of people do the running back, tight end, wide receiver concept, and then maybe towards the end swing back for a quarterback, hopefully to get one that's not going to cost you too much. So that's what the metrics are telling you to do on average overall. Reference class forecasting is a way for us to understand an average journey. Doesn't mean it's your journey, because you've got your own records and you know what you're good at, okay? But it's important to understand what's on the average, and then you can make your decision based on that information. That's what we're trying to do with the reference class forecasting. Okay, so let's move on here. I think we hit the main points. This is just the actual positions and the data there. You can check that out. Pretty much says this is one of those cases where I definitely like the table more than the actual graphs here. But anyway, you can take a look at that. Look at the colors and the sectors and these kind of things. The red is the youth here. And you see where youth is important versus not. And you see kind of the older age there. You can kind of see clearly with running backs, youth rules. And but with running back quarterbacks, it's definitely youth, but I'm not sure the other ones are not too far behind. Okay, think about your draft plans. It's good stuff. Is this fun data or what? Okay, so we have 8 sectors, average points, kind of overall to look, just kind of remind us what's what, where's where. And if we look at the graph, so to me, this graph is better than the table. Looking at quarterbacks' age versus point fantasy point averages. There you go. I think quarterbacks pretty much tell the tale. Well, I did flip colors on you because that's just how we roll. We're extra fun. Running backs, the same thing, but it's definitely youth through the old. That's kind of the tendency. We see kind of this pattern, and we see that pattern. We see that pattern, and we see that pattern. So I think just kind of knowing the general pattern should give you, just if you took a picture of this or even just kind of drew some things, you definitely should research the ages of potential targets you're interested in and kind of see where they fall in some of these overall patterns. And that's my 10-cent tour of this block of material. We got a bigger block coming, but a little short here, a little thin on some of the date and the time. Anyway, please come back. This is The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush, and we're having more fun than any human should have with extra amount of fun data. Woo woo, extra fun.